Hey 5th grade, happy Monday and welcome to our close reading video. As we get started today, you want to make sure to get yourself set up for success first. So the materials you will need to do so: 1. The close reading text recipe for a reef should be open. Number 2, scratch paper and a pencil. And number 3, a comfortable reading and writing space. Go ahead and get yourself set up with those things if you haven't already. Alright, now that we're ready to go, let's take a look at some glows and grows from last week. So a glow for everybody is including a lesson learned in your main idea jot. We did a great job talking about what we as readers took away from that narrative story as our lesson learned. So keep up the good work, including that lesson learned. A grow for us is remembering to include the problem and solution in our main idea jots too. So the deeper meaning for a narrative story would be lesson learned, and for an informational text, as we know, would be the author's point of view. And you guys are doing a great job including those, but don't forget to also include always the problem and solution if it is a narrative text, or the topic and what it's teaching you if it is an informational text. So let's keep up those glows and focus on the grows as we do close reading this week. Speaking of narrative versus informational texts, that brings us to our strategic reading plan. We've already set ourselves up, so now we're ready to preview the text. First thing we want to figure out is the genre. So let's take a look at today's text. Go ahead and scroll through all 3 pages of this text to try to figure out for yourself if it's an informational or a narrative. Pause the video and figure that out. Nice job. So you probably noticed that this text seems like it's teaching us about something. There's also a lot of subheadings and information, and I don't really see characters or dialogue. So this would be an informational text. As we read an informational text, you got to keep those genre frames in mind to help you understand what you're reading as you go. So, informational texts, we want to notice the topic, what it's teaching me about that topic, and the author's point of view on that topic. Take a second now to add that genre frames and those thinking jobs to your note paper to guide your thinking as we go. Alright, so now we know that it is an informational text and we know those thinking jobs or the genre frames that will help us understand it. Let's also take a second to think about the title. The title of this informational text is Recipe for a Reef. So how can we use that title to help guide our thinking as we are reading this informational text? The author purposely chose to have that title to give us a little hint or preview of what to expect as we read. As we read today, and really every day, we want to keep this transferable takeaway in mind. So for informational texts, the headings give us a running start as to what that section might be about. Whenever you are reading informational text, consider the headings as they will help you figure out the big idea in that section. This is especially going to help us as we read this informational text today, as there are many different subheadings and sections, and the headings will give us a really good idea or a little summary about what that section is going to be about. So as we read this text today, keep in mind our genre frames and thinking jobs, as well as that transferable takeaway around headings. Consider the headings as they will help you figure out the big idea in each section. Let's get started. Recipe for a Reef by Catherine Cranking. It takes a special blend of things to make a coral reef. Ingredients: coral, fish, crabs, anemones, sea fans, sponges, and hundreds of other creatures. Preheat. Coral reefs and the creatures in them need sunlight and clear, warm water to grow. No wonder they're found in tropical waters around the equator. Prepare ahead of time. Reefs are built by tiny animals called coral polyps. It takes thousands or even millions of years for a coral reef to form. Mix together an amazing variety of animals. Enjoy a feast of color and life. That's the basic recipe for a coral reef. To learn more about how reefs are made, turn the page. That brings us to question number 1. What is the big topic of this article, How does the title add to your understanding of this? Considering that first page that we just read, what is the big topic of this article, and how does the title add to your understanding of this? Pause the video, answer the question, and then we'll continue. Alright, welcome back. I'm excited to learn more about these coral reefs. As we read the second page, keep that transferable takeaway around headings giving us a running start to what this section will be about in mind. First section, polyps up close. A hard coral polyp's body is a tiny tube. One end of the tube is attached inside the polyp's stony house. The other end has tentacles around the rim. They make the polyp look like a tiny flower. Polyps feed by reaching out with their tentacles to catch tiny animals floating past. The tentacles of each polyp move the food to the polyp's mouth in the center of the tentacles. A collection of corals. I'm thinking that this section might be about the corals themselves, maybe some different types. Let's see. A collection of corals. Soft coral polyps look similar to hard coral polyps, but they don't make stony reefs the way hard corals do. Instead, they make soft, leathery branches and stalks. Unlike their hard coral cousins, soft corals sway with the movement of the water. They look kind of like plants. As you see here, both hard and soft corals come in many amazing shapes and colors. Let's take a second to look at these pictures. Third section, a pile of polyps. Before reading that third section, let's answer question number 2. Based on the section heading, a pile of polyps, what do you expect this section to be about? Remember, the heading is a running start about what the section will be about. Answer the question now, and then continue when you're done. Alright, let's go back to the text to read that section to see if our predictions were correct. A pile of polyps. A coral reef like the one at left is made by tiny animals called coral polyps. There are two kinds, hard corals and soft corals. Hard corals are the kind that make reefs. More about soft corals later. Here's how a reef is made. Each hard coral polyp builds a little stony house around itself. The house is polyp's skeleton. When polyps die, the hard skeletons are all that is left of them. Other polyps build new houses on top of the old ones. After many thousands of years of the skeletons piling up like this, a coral reef is formed. Some reefs are gigantic. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is the longest reef in the world. It's made up of more than 1,250 miles of piled up polyp skeletons. Though the corals that build reefs grow slowly, others can grow faster, up to 8 inches a year. Take a second to reflect. After reading that heading, a pile of polyps, was your prediction about what this section would be about correct? What does that subheading, a pile of polyps, have to do with what we just read? Think about that on your own for a second. If you were thinking like me, you might have realized that a coral reef is quite literally a pile of polyps. Like they're saying, it's made up of millions of them, sometimes up to miles long. That is a lot of polyps, a real big pileup. Whoop, whoop, you made it to our secret question. Today's secret question is, what is your birthday? So go ahead and answer the secret question on the Google form right here. Secret question, type in your birthday. Nice job finding the secret question. It means that you have been listening to this video, taking advantage of our learning targets, our transferable takeaways, and all those really important skills. Nice job. Let's head back to the text and continue reading that last page. Meet a few creatures that live in a coral reef. Proud parent. Sea anemones will sting most fishes, but this Clark's anemofish can live safely in a sea's anemone's tentacles without being stung. See all those bright orange dots? They're the anemofish's eggs. Most fishes just lay their eggs and leave, but this mom takes care of her eggs, keeping them clean and chasing off intruders until they hatch. school days. This school of ribbon sweet lips makes a colorful show as it swims along the reef. Sweet lips get their funny name because of the big puffy-looking lips. These fish are also called grunts for their pig-like grunting sound they make. Let's go across here to lifelong neighbors. You have to look closely to see these tiny Denise's seahorses. They perfectly match the soft coral sea fan they're clinging to. These tiny fish are homebodies. They'll stay in the same coral their entire lives. Trick claws. The porcelain crab uses its claws to protect itself, but not the way you might think. Instead of pinching when it's attacked by an enemy, it just sheds one or both of its claws. If the crab is lucky, the claws will distract the enemy while the crab scurries off. Later, the claws will grow back. All balled up. This bristly ball is made up of the arms of a feather star. Feather stars are cousins of sea stars. They can have as few as 5 arms or as many arms as 200. Tiny hairs on the feathery arms catch food that floats in the water. With the help of mucus, the hairs move food down the feather star's arms to its mouth. Sponging on. A coral reef has lots of things growing all over it, including sponges. The sponge here is bluish and branchy, but sponges come in many different colors and shapes. Sponges can make good hiding places for reef creatures, from fish crabs to shrimps. With the right temperature, preparation, and ingredients, you have the recipe for making a beautiful, lively coral reef. Hope you've gotten your fill. Now that we've read that 3rd page, answer question number 3. What's the most important idea about our big topic on this 3rd page? Remember our transferable takeaway around subheadings, helping us preview the section we're going to read, and it also is like a little summary of what you read. So go ahead and look at page 3. What's the most important idea about our big topic on this 3rd page? Alright guys, so now that we've read the text and answered those questions as we went to help us understand, we're ready to write the main idea. Now remember, this was an informational text, so what you include in your main idea might be a little different from when it was a narrative text. The CFS, Criteria for Success, helps us guide our thinking as we're writing. So, is your main idea that you'll be writing here accurate? So does it talk about all of those important genre frames or thinking jobs that you were thinking of as you read it? Such as, what's the topic and what did it teach you about the topic? Is it contextualized? So, do you have evidence from the text? And does it include the deepest meaning supported by the text? Which, as we know, when reading an informational text, is the author's point of view, how they felt about this topic and what they wanted us to know. As you are writing, use this checklist below to help you guide your writing to make sure that you have included all of these things for a solid main idea jot. Remember, our glow and grow from this week, we did a great job including the lesson learned last week, and this week you want to include all of those genre frames, all of your thinking jobs for a full paragraph long main idea jot. Nice job. Can't wait to read some awesome main ideas.